What's up everybody, Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2021 Dodge Durango SRT Hellcat. Huge thanks to Dodge for providing me here with the Hellcat Durango to review for you guys today. So all 2021 Durangos have been restyled and they really nicely sharpened them up all in the front. I mean, they all have these new LED headlamps which have these new DRLs that look really cool. And then of course here on the Hellcat version you get a more aggressive front bumper down there. So they deleted the fog lamps you usually get on other Durangos, and that was to allow for better cooling. So you have the one on the driver's side here which actually does suck in some air, and on the passenger side there it actually helps with cooling of the vehicle. I also really love this hood which has these functional air extractors which help vent heat, and then you have in the middle there a functional cold air scoop, and so that will help feed some air to that supercharger. Coming out of the sides you have these massive 15.75 inch rotors on these 6-piston Brembo calipers. I mean, they're massive. They're also slotted here, so you know, you have some ventilation there, and you're on these 20-inch wheels with 295 wide tires all around, and those I think look pretty good, but there are some other wheel options you can get for these as well if you'd like. We have a nice large Hellcat badge here on the fender, which is kind of raised up a little bit more than they were in the past and looks great. And then otherwise, going out towards the back of the vehicle there, one of the big changes is you have a new roof spoiler there here on the Hellcats, and so it has little gurney flaps to help with additional downforce that it can generate now with that new spoiler. I also love just the rear diffuser and everything is a little bit more aggressive here on the Hellcat version. It's not a wild departure from a regular SRT Durango, but I think it's a really nice improvement. You have the larger exhaust tips there that look good, and just all the same great goodness you get from other Durangos in the past with those racetrack tail lamps, which I think are really cool how they wrap all the way around the back end there. And I think it's just very attractive out back as well. But overall, yeah, I just think it looks very cool. It is a little bit of a sleeper though. It's not quite as in your face as like the wide body Chargers and Challengers. You know, this is still a narrow body kind of look and stuff here for the Durango, but I think it still looks fantastic. But it's just so crazy. This is a 3-row crossover with 710 horsepower. And looking at it, you know, it looks fast, but it doesn't look like, you know, because no one offers 700 horsepower in a 3-row crossover like this. So it's really kind of a sleeper in a way, but it looks very menacing still at the same time. The interior of the 2021 Durango Hellcat is very cool and nicely jazzed up a little bit beyond a regular Durango. So first, I mean, they made a massive change to this interior with this whole dashboard area being completely restyled, and it really, I think, adds a lot of visual width to this dashboard, makes it feel a little less square than it did in the past, and some really nice improvements we'll get to. But first, sitting down in these seats. Seats are mostly the same as other SRT Durangos in the past, but they have really large bolsters, but they're nice and wide out so that they accommodate all body types very well. But great seats. This one is wrapped with Alcantara in the middle and then leather on the sides, but you can get full leather seats as well here in the Hellcat version if you'd like it. And they're also heated and ventilated seats as well, which is always nice to have. Moving on to the steering wheel here, this is the flat bottom SRT wheel you get, and it's a very beefy wheel. I mean, you have very large, you know, 10 and 2 notches, even notches down here, lower in the wheel, but you know, 9-3 grip's great. Just a few buttons here on it. This one does not have the adaptive cruise option, so you would have all those buttons here on the right hand side. Otherwise though, you know, very uncluttered, and part of that is thanks to the back of the wheel here where you see not only your paddle shifters, but also these little rockers which help you to control your volume and tuning if you'd like, and so that's great to have. And it's an awesome wheel. That another little perk is that the SRT badge here on the steering wheel is actually illuminated at night, and on the Hellcats it's red. If you go for a regular SRT 392 it'll be backlit white, but very cool to have lighting on your steering wheel. It's an awesome touch. Moving on to the gauges here in the Durango, they're basically the same as what they were before. They did upgrade the graphics and stuff on them a little bit, but you know, you still have the analog dials there on the left and on the right, but I like the red backgrounds you have for those. And then the middle there, it's a little bit sportier looking as well than a regular Durango, but you know, all digital there in the middle. It's a smaller screen, but still is a great display. And Dodge, especially SRT products, they're so good at giving you so much information, especially if you're an enthusiast. So you know, you can have your basic large speed readout and things like that there, but then you can also go down to vehicle info and it'll give you every single temperature for every single possible thing you can imagine or want. It's all there, including, you know, a boost pressure gauge. You can have a live readout of your engine torque, engine horsepower, on and on it goes. There's also the performance pages you can go through in there, and that'll allow you to do 0 to 60 timers, G meters, all that kind of stuff. And if you don't care about the performance stuff, you can also just go and see your audio information, those types of things, trip info, fuel economy. And so much great information in there, and I really love the way they give you so much customization with that. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, though, arguably the largest change is this new 10.1-inch Uconnect 5 infotainment system, which is brand new here in 2021 models for some Dodge and Chrysler vehicles, but the Durango is here one of the first to get it, and it's just this gorgeous screen. The resolution is, I think they said, about 3 times sharper than before. The actual system is 5 times faster than it is in a Uconnect 4 screen, and it's a really nice setup with this new software. So you can have this customizable home screen now, which is something new for these Uconnect systems. They didn't really have a primary home screen in the past. Now you have that. You can customize it and put anything you want really in there. So anything you use a lot can be within one touch if you customize this. And so that's really great. But I mean, you have volume and tune knobs, so it's nice and easy to, go through radio stations, things like that. It also does have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And so that is great to have the wireless. So as soon as you hop in the car, it's already, ready to go, and you have your smartphone integration right there. It also does have Amazon Alexa and a bunch of other things you can dive into in there if you'd like. It is an Android-based system. Everything else is just very easy. Navigation's great. It's TomTom maps. They all work very well. And I really love this system from just using it for a couple of hours here. I'm looking forward to hopefully getting some form of Durango as a press vehicle here and spending a week with this system to really, pair up my phone, dive into it, and see how everything works. But so far, I'm very impressed with this system. I think it's great, and just looks really nice as well. Also in this area, you'll see they redesigned these air vents. I mean, this whole dashboard, like I said, has been reshaped, but I really like the little metallic accents you have there on the air vents. Coming down also, you'll see, first off, you have some Alcantara here, which is, part of the way this interior is configured. You have this forged carbon, they call it, which is a very cool look and different than your ordinary carbon fiber you usually get in other sportier vehicles. But then coming down to your climate controls here, so this whole area has been restyled too. So now you actually have hard buttons for your heated and cooled seats, heated steering wheel, and even a mute button here. So whenever you press the volume button in Dodge products, it just turns off the screen. So this is a nice way to just mute it without having to just turn the volume down and still leaving the screen on. And then you just have, a couple little buttons and a little knob there for fan speed. And all these buttons, have a pretty high quality feel to them. They're a little bit wiggly, but nice rubbery resistance to them and feel good. You also have this new little toggle bank down here, which in the Hellcat version gives you an SRT button, launch button, and a couple other buttons there. And so that's a nice little touch too. They also redesigned this whole center console area here, so you have more storage than before. So you'll see 2 USB-C jacks and 2 USB jacks and an auxiliary jack in there, which is great to have all that. You'll also see another little slot here right beneath that, and also you'll see a wireless charging pad here, which actually is tilted a little bit with the front or the top of the phone being tilted up a little bit, so you have a better view of your phone while it's in the charger there. And that's worked pretty well, although with the acceleration you can get in a Hellcat Durango, my phone was sliding out of this wireless charger even with these little notches to hold it in place. But that's just what you get with 710 horsepower accelerations. But anyway, but great setup there for that, and it worked really well. Otherwise, you have these 2 cup holders here, which are nicely illuminated, and another little spot here for your key. I also still love how you have the T-shaped shifter handle. And then you have the center armrest, which does have some padding to it. By the way, they also did pad around this center console area where your knee comes in contact. That is a little bit softer than just hard plastic it had in the past. I still wish this was softer yet though, because it still is pretty firm, but it certainly is going to be a little bit more comfortable to rest your knee on than in past Durangos. And so that is a nice improvement there, both for the driver and the passenger side. But anyway, getting back to the center armrest, you open that up and then you will see not much space, but part of that is because this one has the multimedia package, so you have the Blu-ray players there for the backseat passengers. So that's what, takes up half of this. The other half though is fairly shallow still, but you could fit maybe some glasses, things like that in there. You also will see a traditional power outlet in there, so nice to have that. Not a great amount of space, but at least you do have this big open bin up front here now. The backseat space here in the Durangos though, so the backseat and the third row haven't changed dimensionally. The Durango is the same as it was before, but for those who aren't familiar with the Durango interiors here in the back, so this one does have the 6 6-seat option, and so you have that console in the middle there, but still really great seats back there. They're also heated seats, and yeah, that whole center console area has 2 layers for the armrest there, which is also just as soft as the one up front here. So you have that one first top layer, which gives you a little bit of storage, and then another bottom layer, which is much deeper, has another power outlet and another USB jack in there. And then you'll also see 2 cup holders in that area, another little bin. And then looking forward, you'll see dedicated air vents here, as well as heated seat controls, along with 2 more USB jacks and a normal plug, which is crucial because you can actually run game systems back here. You can see the hookups here for HDMI right in the seat, and then you have those screens that you can flip up and have, you know, whatever game you want playing on there, or you can just, again, watch Blu-rays and things like that. So that's great to have. You also have little pockets in the doors, and there's also additional air vents in the roof. So nice that you have air vents both in the roof and in the front here, because that's something that, you know, sometimes you have one or the other in other 3-row crossovers, and you also have your controls up there in the roof as well. Now, the only thing about that whole center cubby there is that getting into the 3rd row is a little bit trickier. So to get into that 3rd row, you just pull the lever there, and then that whole thing flips forward, and then you pull the red tab, and then that actually gets it out of your way, so you can walk back there. And the 3rd row is actually fairly spacious in the Durangos here. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself in the 2nd row. The 2nd row seats, by the way, do not slide, at least here in the Hellcat version. But I still have about an inch or so of legroom to spare in that 3rd row, which is pretty good. Now, the 2nd row space isn't massive. Maybe there are some others out there that give you more space, but I still have about 4 or 5 inches of legroom to spare in the 2nd row too, even with all that space in the 3rd row. So pretty impressive amount of space here in this vehicle. And again, it's aged pretty well considering that the dimensions of this vehicle haven't changed in several years. And you also have cup holders back there for that 3rd row as well. And so as far as all that goes, I think this is a very, you know, roomy and spacious and family-friendly vehicle. Again, as long as you don't have to get into that 3rd row all the time, because it is a little bit extra work compared to some of the, you know, non-performance 3-row family SUVs in this segment. Moving on to trunk space though, so that is of course going to depend on whether or not you need that 3rd row. If you do need that 3rd row, then you're not going to have a ton of space there, but it is a decent amount of space. You can fit, you know, a couple of carry-on suitcases in there. You also see a power outlet back there, and also various little hooks and tie-down things, which is great. There's also a little bin there on the left-hand side, and if you lift up the floor there, you'll see a nicely sized storage space underneath the floor there as well, which is a great extra bonus. And then of course you can fold down that 3rd row and even the 2nd row if you want. You can have just as much length and cargo space back there as you'd like, so it just comes down to what your needs are. But overall, you know, I'd say that even with the 3rd row up, that area there is fairly competitive, even, you know, with all the newest competitors out there these days. All right, so start and go for a drive. The Hellcat Durango here has the same Dodge key you get in other Dodge models, but it's a really nice key. It has the SRT logo there on it, and yeah, just a red key, which is cool too. That gives you the max power. I believe they still have the black keys for those who want a little bit less horsepower, but very cool they continue with the red key. Just a few buttons there on the back. I mean, it's, you know, got a little bit of a rubbery texture to it, so it feels a little nicer than a regular plastic key, but this key does feel a little dated these days, but I like that it's not too big. So overall, not bad. But of course, it is keyless access, keyless entry, push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it roars to life. All right, so setting off here in the 2021 Dodge Durango SRT Hellcat. So the first thing that you notice about these, well, I think the first thing I noticed was the supercharger whine. Very easy to provoke. I love hearing the whine of that supercharger. It's always so much fun in any of these Hellcat products. So that's always really fun. You also hear the exhaust pretty loudly right off the bat here. So it has a larger X pipe. They actually reduced the size of the mufflers by 2/3 and really open it up even beyond what you get with other Hellcat models, so that it's actually much louder. And so they wanted to give it, you know, a muscle car sound here, even though you're in a 3-row SUV. And so that's pretty awesome. The exhaust does drone a little bit at the low RPMs though. That's the only thing I will say. That's typical of any other SRT product. You do get some drone with them, but you do have some very awesome sounds as well. And so I think that's something most enthusiasts are willing to deal with. Other things, visibility is very good here in the Durangos. So you have A-pillars that are fairly thick, but they are kind of nicely off out of your way a little bit, so they're not right in your line of view a whole lot. And so I think visibility is pretty good. You of course have a nice high seating position with this being an SUV as well. Also, the ride here in in the street, auto mode is actually, nice and soft and comfortable still. You can firm it up with these adaptive dampers if you'd like. It is a little bit more sporty with its setup than what you're going to get with a regular Durango, of course, but it's totally daily drivable. It's of course still very comfortable. This is a family vehicle still after all, and so you don't have any compromises as far as ride quality goes. And now in sport mode with the adaptive dampers on their firmer setting. Now we're on a very bumpy road here, and you can feel the bumps a little bit more, but it still is going to be totally fine, and shouldn't upset you too much in your daily driving. Throttle response is also nice and eager. Anything that has a supercharger or is naturally aspirated usually has really nice throttle response, but especially the Dodge SRT products are always calibrated to be very eager with their acceleration, and this is no different. It's not maybe quite as jumpy as like a Charger Scat Pack that was like really always begging you to go faster. This isn't quite as extreme with the throttle mapping, but it still is very responsive, and that only gets sportier once you go up into the sport mode, which can make it even touchier. Brakes also have a nice feeling to them, very progressive. They don't bite too hard towards the top, but as you dip down into them, they're very strong, massive Brembo brakes. They're 6-piston Brembo brakes in the front. They're 15.75 inches in the diameter for the rotors, and of course are totally up to the task of hauling down this much power in this large of a vehicle very quickly. The steering also has a slightly weighty feel to it that of course you can also dial up with your drive modes to have that heavier if you'd like, but it's electric power steering, but it's precise and accurate, and that also feels pretty good. But I put it up into the sport mode, and let's see how it accelerates. Here we go. Woo! Man! Wow, that is impressive. Oh man. Whew. So this thing gets up and moves very, very well. Of course, since it has the all-wheel drive, it puts the power to the ground even better than most of the other Hellcat models. So anyway, in the Durango Hellcat here, we run the same glorious 6.2 liter supercharged HEMI V8 engine. It does 710 horsepower in this application, 645 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 is 3.5 seconds. It'll do an 11.5 second quarter-mile time, and it has a top speed of 180 as well. And it is impressive, and that was just in sport mode. You can go into a dedicated full launch mode and have an even more impressive launch and actually get that 3.5 second time. But wow, even just in sport mode, stomping it from a stop sign, I mean, it is crazy how strong this thing is. And it very much reminds me of the Jeep Trackhawk. That was also very extreme. Now that's a little bit of a smaller vehicle since it's just a 2-row versus this being a 3-row, but man, oh man, this thing, it's so much fun, especially with the all-wheel drive. You have no wasted power. I mean, it was wanting to spin the wheels a little bit even with the all-wheel drive, but it just, man, this thing hauls. And for another spec, once you're done hauling in a straight line, as far as actually towing and doing hauling in that way, this will actually tow 8,700 pounds as well, which is best in class, and that also goes for many of the other Durango models. And so it's very impressive. It can tow that much and also still be as fast as it is. And this time let's do an acceleration in the manual mode. Here we go. That's also very much fun. So I was already at like 4,500 RPMs at first, so it took it a second to shift to second, but it is this fantastic ZF 8-speed automatic transmission. It's the 8 HP 95 transmission here, so it's the all-wheel drive version of this ZF 8-speed they use in these Hellcat models. And it is very, very snappy. Downshifts are almost immediate. It sounds so good. Oh man, I can get used to this. And having the manual control is so good since it's so quick with the shifts. You really feel in control of the driving experience in manual mode. It really does feel like you're not missing out if you're someone who loves a manual transmission. You have such snappy shifts here in a 3-row crossover with this much power. It is like the best of all the worlds if you're someone who needs this kind of space. It is... In manual mode, you're able to get more of that supercharger whine, so you can kind of let it hang out in those higher RPMs where it's ready to make that boost. All Alright, so we got a little bit of a tighter corner here. Some very gentle corners here in this area of South Carolina where I'm driving currently, but the road is starting to get a little bit tighter and a little bit windier, and this is where you appreciate the upgraded suspension here in the Hellcat Durango as well. It builds on the SRT suspension from a regular SRT Durango, but then they say they improved it so that it has more response, more stability, and also have a little bit less understeer too. So clearly you're still dealing with a very heavy vehicle, so you're not going to have anything that's going to feel too agile, but you do have 295 wide tires all around here. They're either all-season tires, or you can option up some 3-season tires and have summer tires on here as well. But so, these corners aren't too tight, but it still just gives you a really good feel that this feels very planted and stable. There's also like a rear spoiler that gives you some higher downforce at higher speeds especially, so that's always nice. But since this road is nice and tight, it really shows how, especially in sport mode, steering is nice and tight. Everything does feel very precise and buttoned down, so that I have a lot of confidence, going around these corners. It does handle itself very well for, again, a 3-row crossover. Sometimes I have to kind of remind myself what I'm driving here. This isn't just a Charger or something. This is a 3-row SUV, and I'm still able to hustle it on these back roads. I'm able to take off in a straight line like nobody's business, and it's just all so impressive that they really do make this well-rounded. I mean, yes, you're not going to be able to hide the weight. It is heavy, it is big, but you have all the other hardware to back you up, so that you can basically do just about anything you want here in this within reason, and it's going to keep up with you just fine. But oh yeah, this thing is so much fun to drive, and it's just the only thing about 710 horsepower, even in something as large as this, is they just really wish that you didn't have to sit behind traffic, that you had just carte blanche to do whatever speeds you want, because it's so addicting. You want to dip into it so much more than you're legally able to. It's just it's got so much potential. But thankfully we will be going to the track here, and I'll be able to take this around a circuit and see how it laps there. I'm sure it's going to be pretty impressive for something this large, to have this much power, but I'll be curious to see how it handles all that extra heft, as well as how fast it goes in a straight line. And the Durango Hellcat was also impressive around Carolina Motorsports Park. Because of all the filming I needed to do, unfortunately I only had time for 3 laps in the Durango Hellcat, so I wasn't able to do any kind of in-depth track analysis like I would have liked to. But the standout thing for me was that I again had to remind myself of what I was driving, because I was going around corners with so much poise and stability that I didn't even feel like it was the 5,700 pound SUV that it is. By the way, that curb weight does make it about 332 pounds heavier than the regular SRT model, mostly thanks to the supercharger and its related hardware. Also, despite the worse aerodynamics compared with the Charger and Challenger, the Durango still kept pulling hard even at higher speeds, and the brakes were confidence-inspiring too, even when slowing down from triple digits. And so I doubt anyone that buys one of these will ever flog it on a track, but if you find yourself on one ever, just know that it's more than up to the task of handling it, and it does it quite effortlessly actually. And we're in the middle of nowhere, so let's try a launch. Just apply brake pressure, and I think we're good. It says launch enabled. Here we go. Wow! Woo! Man, that one made the blood rush to the back of my head.
After half a mile.
This thing is so much fun, and I'm not even in the sport mode right now, and it still just is so eager, and this thing just, of course has so much power that you don't have to be in any dedicated mode to make it feel fast. It is always ready to go. And another rolling acceleration. And it sounds so good too with those upshifts from this automatic. You get that little bit of like an overrun type of sound, and it just, it sounds so good. Yep, it's all the same wonderful goodness as other Hellcats, just in this practical 3-row package. It's the greatest thing ever. I absolutely love this thing. It'll never get old, and especially since this is for the 2021 model year only, this will go down in history as a special model. And you know, it might not be as extreme as the red eyes and all that kind of stuff, but still, the fact that they put this engine in the Durango, even just for 1 year, is truly a gift to muscle car enthusiasts. And yeah, this is like the go-to dream family vehicle now for myself and for a lot of other people, I think, as well, to just have all your Hellcat fun while being able to haul the family, haul whatever you want to tow. Who would have thought that we'd be living in times where you can get over 700 horsepower in a 3-row crossover SUV? It's just crazy, and I just love Dodge for being bold enough to do this kind of stuff. They don't have to, but they do it, and I think the world is a slightly more fun place as a result. So yeah, that's about all my thoughts here on the Durango Hellcat. Overall, like I said, I just absolutely love this thing. How can you not? I mean, it's just such a fun package, and if you can afford the $81,000 starting price for these, and you can grab one here this year while they're around, I wholeheartedly recommend it. I think it's just a blast. And yeah, and you also have a very special model that will probably be collectible down the road as well. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on the Hellcat Durango in the comments below. Huge thanks to Dodge for providing me here with this opportunity. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.